We are going to be in Daniel chapter 3 today, but before we even get there, have y'all ever been reading the Bible and think, what just happened? I do it all the time, like, really? And people often ask me, Matt, if I were to write you a blank check to cover your expenses for, like, let's say the next 5 years, all expenses paid, pursue your dream career, outside of student ministry, right? I have to say that, right? I would want to be a movie and TV show podcast host, where I just talk about movies and TV shows. Not that there's not a dime a dozen for that market, but I love movies, I love TV shows. So when I read the Bible and when I do things in life, I look at it like, oh, what if they were to turn this into like a 8-episode Netflix series? And a couple weeks ago when Pastor Eric launched us into Daniel chapter 1, I thought, what if Daniel chapter 1 was an 8-episode Netflix series? And then last week when Kelly was up here and she was talking about prayer, I thought, what if that was an 8-episode Netflix series? And then as I was studying, I've known for months that I've been preaching up here today. As I've been studying, I was like, man, what if this was an 8-episode Netflix series? Now, if you guys are like me and you like just about anything that comes out on TV, you know there's 2 types of endings for TV shows today. There's suspenseful cliffhangers, where you got to wait 3 years to find out what happened, and then there's the good, happy endings. If we read chapters 1 and 2 and 3, which we'll see today, they're all happy endings. Daniel chapter 1, Pastor Eric talked about it. Babylonian invasion, right? It starts off with a bang, starts off kind of crazy. Daniel chapter 1, Babylonian invasion, kidnapping the Israelites, bringing them to Babylon, changing their name, making sure they learn the ways of the Babylonians. And then Daniel's like, hey, we're not going to eat that food. And the prince of the eunuchs is like, do what? And he's like, yeah, we're not going to eat that food. And then there's a very happy ending. And then season 2 or chapter 2 starts off with this crazy dream that Nebuchadnezzar has. He has this dream, and the dream is so troubling and no one can interpret it, where he's like, okay, I'm going to kill all the wise men in the kingdom. Whoa, calm down, dude. And then Daniel eventually gets to interpret the dream, and Nebuchadnezzar ends up worshiping Daniel, and Daniel's like, whoa, not me, God. And then King Nebuchadnezzar says, all right, because you were able to do this, I'm going to promote you to the chief of wise men and to a governor. And then at the end of, we didn't really look at it last week, but at the end of chapter 2, at Daniel's request, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were also promoted to positions of leadership. I would miss a golden student director opportunity to not use the old phrase, show me your friends, and I will show you your future. Got it? Now, I'm going to be looking down here a lot because these are the students that come on Wednesday nights. They scare me a lot less than y'all do. So I'm not ignoring y'all. I just like looking at familiar faces. But show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Because of Daniel's influence over the king, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted to positions of leadership. End season 2. Season 3, or chapter 3. Now we have a really big what just happened question mark. Because out of nowhere, King Nebuchadnezzar goes from worshiping God at the end of chapter 2 to building a 90-foot statue made of gold and said, hey, guess what? Everyone's going to worship this. Now, we don't know exactly how much time has passed, but most scholars say there is a significant time jump in between the end of chapter 2 and the beginning of chapter 3. I did a lot of research, and I saw, on average, it was about 8 to 10 years. Some historians and scholars says it was upward of 20 years. I don't know for sure. Like I said, the average was about 8 to 10 years from the end of chapter 2 to the start of chapter 3. Obviously, with Daniel in the high court of the king, he's seen the power of the king. Now, if we read all of chapter 3, Daniel's nowhere to be found. Again, most scholars and historians agree that Daniel is on what we would call in the military today a TDY. He's on a temporary assignment. He's doing the king's business. And again, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Without godly counsel, the king loses his mind. He builds this 90-foot statue, and he sends out a herald who says, hear ye, hear ye. What a time to be alive. I would honestly love if there were heralds in the street still. Hear ye, when you hear, and then he names all these instruments. When you hear all this music, you're going to stop what you're doing and you're going to bow down and worship this 90-foot golden statue that I had made. Well, we just went from worshiping God to, hey, we're going to worship this 90-foot golden statue. And growing up, right, I grew up in church. I've been going to church really every week since I was about 6 years old. I heard this story all the time, and I always wondered, like, what did that look like? And I love how God uses, like, just regular everyday things that you go through in life to show you the Bible. I was deployed in 2023 to the Middle East during the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. Now, in Ramadan, that's where, like, the people who practice Islam take it and they multiply it. And during Ramadan, you have to pray multiple times a day in order to try to find peace with their God. One of those times is noon on the dot. And I worked the midnight to noon shift, and usually we got off about 11:15, 11:25. So we would go eat, and then we would go back to our room and sleep, and then rinse, lather, repeat the next day. But me and my supervisor, we were walking back to our tents where we were sleeping, and then we didn't realize what time it was. The prayer chant started going off all over the base. And every national of the country we were in stopped what they were doing and began facing Mecca, which is located in Saudi Arabia, and began praying. And I thought, this is kind of crazy. And then later that night, I was telling my wife, and she's like, well, that was just like Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I was like, oh, you're right. That was. So let's go back to Babylon, right? The music plays. Everyone, by royal decree, is to bow down and worship this golden statue. If not, curtains. You're going to be thrown in a fiery furnace. No questions asked. So I don't know how long goes by, but the music plays, and everyone and their mother bows down, and they worship this golden statue who can do absolutely nothing for them. Except 3 dudes. Disclaimer number 2. I say the word dude a lot. I mean it very respectfully. Except 3 dudes. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, if you're like me, right, she stole the joke, I'm going to say it anyway. Kelly stole my VeggieTale joke last week. If you're like me and you grew up in a super conservative homeschool household, Shadrach and Benny. All right? And the golden bunny. Who knows what I'm talking about? Yep, VeggieTales, baby. All right. So Shadrach and Benny, or the 3 amigos, as we're going to call them today, said, we're not going to do it. We're not going to bow down. And right before we're going to start in Daniel chapter 3, verse number 13, but in the verses directly preceding that, all these wise men, they're like, yes, finally, we got these fools. And they go to the king and they're like, hey, king, guess what? Remember when you made that royal decree and you said that if the music plays, we're going to bow down and worship this golden statue? Remember that? Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, remember how you said that if you don't, do that one thing where we bow down and worship it, then the bad thing happens with the fiery furnace and we throw them in and kill the people? And the king's probably like, dude, yeah, spit it out. What's going on? Yeah, the Hebrew guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're not doing it. And the king's probably like, oof. Did not think that one through. And that's where we get to our story and our big idea first. It says our big idea for the day is real courage comes from trusting God completely, even when the heat is on. And leading up to this story, we see our first point right off the bat is we see a conflict of convictions. A conflict of convictions. Daniel chapter 3 and verse number 13 says, Then in a furious rage, Nebuchadnezzar gave orders to bring in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar asked them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true that you don't serve my gods or worship the golden statue I have set up? Now, if you're ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the drum, and every other kind of music that exists, fall down and worship the statue I made. But if you don't throw it, you will immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God that can save you from my power? Man, King Nebuchadnezzar is a real prideful dude. Who is this God, right? Remember that same God that, translated your dream that nobody could, that one, right? And these wise men, or the rulers of Babylon, they're like, we got them. We got them. We got the Christians. Bring them in. Let's smoke them. And they get brought before a very irate King Nebuchadnezzar. And he's pretty hot, furious rage. 3 Hebrews in that position of leadership heard the music and said, nah, bro, this ain't for us. And King Nebuchadnezzar, right, we just talked about it, he's an extremely prideful dude. Who is this God who could save you from my power? Who is this God that can save you from my power in my furnace? And then if you look at verse 15, he kind of like takes a chill pill. Because he's like, it's over for you. And then he says, but now if you're ready. And he's already given them a second chance because the royal decree said, if you're not, immediately you're thrown in the fiery furnace. And so now he's given the Hebrews a second chance. Hey, just this one time. Just bow down. We're good. You don't got to worry about it. Just one time. Oh, that conviction you have in your heart? It's okay. And, right, let's talk about it from a human standpoint, right? You're brought before the most powerful person in the entire world, the king of Babylon. He's already successfully kidnapped you. You're chilling in his kingdom. He's promoted you to a position of leadership, so you probably interact with him a lot. And now he's saying, hey, just bow down and worship. They're offered a compromise. Worship the statue and be spared, or don't and die. I don't know about you, but for me, the 2 worst ways to go, drowning and flames. I just if I go, when my time is to, cross over into glory, as we said in the Baptist world growing up, when that's my time, I hope it's quick, fast, and easy. Fire, no thank you. When Hannah and I were living in Alaska, we went over to a friend's house for one of the holidays where it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Prevalent, I guess, to have cookouts. It was either Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, one of the days. We were at a friend's house for a cookout. And they're like, Matt, Hannah was pregnant with Kinsley, so I was growing the dad skills. They're like, Matt, you're going to be a dad soon. You're going to grill. Sick. All right, I know how to grill. Then I didn't know that my friend had already soaked the charcoal. So I went out there and I took the lighter fluid and I re-soaked the charcoal, not knowing it was already soaked. Then I took the lighter and I lit the charcoal, and then I got kissed by the sun. And when I say kissed by the sun, I mean the S-U-N. I had a fireball hit me right in the face, took half my eyebrow, took all my arm hair off, and I was just like, that was not fun. And I walked in, I was like, yo, what just happened? And then he's like, well, did you re-soak it? Yeah, did you soak it? Yeah, I did. Thanks for the warning, dude. Like, come on, he almost killed me, not knowing that he soaked it. I learned a very valuable lesson that day. As a 21-year-old E3 in the military, fire ain't no joke. Back to Babylon. They're staring at this furnace. Don't you think, they're thinking, man, this fire kind of ain't no joke, right? They have the literal heat that's going. And in fact, later in our story, we'll see that they make the king so mad that he's like, yeah, you know how it's supposed to be this? Yeah, make it 7 times hotter. And then we're going to throw them in. So they got the literal heat staring them in the face. Then they have the social heat. They're the only ones not doing it. The only ones in the entire kingdom not bowing down. Don't you think that's a little awkward? Like, whoa, everyone's bowing down and they're just looking around like, hey, you think they can see us? Like, we're the only ones not doing it, but maybe if we sneak out, we can avoid the king. The social pressure, the social heat. Political heat, they're staring right at the king, and he's saying, do this or die. There was that big time conflict of convictions. Here's the conflict. A compromise, right? If they would have just bowed down, a compromise would mean they have to compromise their faith. They know what Jesus says. They bow down just one time. That's it, just one time. I don't want to go in the fiery furnace. Just one time. Their witness, trashed. Their influence, gone. Everything they had working for them, see ya. That conflict of interest. Here's the cool thing, though. Whether it's today in 2025, which we'll talk about later in the message, or if it's back then in Babylon, not only do we experience conflict of convictions, we have confidence in the Creator. We have utter confidence in the Creator. Verse 16 says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to give you an answer to this question, right? The question being, now if you're ready, you going to do it? We don't need to give you an answer to this question. If the God we serve exists, then he can rescue us from the furnace. And he can rescue us from the power of you, the king. But even if he does not rescue us, we want you as the king to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden statue that you set up. I love their response, man. Right? It gets me in trouble all the time as a married person. You done? Don't say that to your wife. Don't say it to your wife. She's sitting there talking to you. You may have stepped over the line a little bit and irated your wife. You done? It just doesn't end well. And that's what they do to this king. They're like, bro, land the plane, man. Because here's the thing. If God exists, he's the one who could rescue us from your power. But if he doesn't and we die, we're not going to worship the statue you set up. Their faith was not a conditional faith. They said, we will not bow down. Period, as the kids say. It was not a conditional faith. It wasn't a faith where they looked at each other and said, well, just this once, is it okay to turn our back on our faith? The one that spared us from the Babylonian invasion, the kidnapping, the standing to our convictions of eating our own diet, the promotion to the high court, just this one time, can we say no? No, it was, we will not bow down, period. It's not really a life or death situation for me, but I remember a time in my life, and the students are going to be like, Matt, not this story again. You say it like once a month. It's the best story I have, okay? I didn't go to Bible college, so I don't have all the cool Bible college stories that Pastor Eric has. Most of y'all know I have 4 kids. I have Kinsley, I have Emerson, then I got to name the third one. That bad boy's name is Anakin. And then I have Eliana. Now, Eliana's my youngest. She is a miracle baby. She is a very good thing. I had military insurance when we had her type of baby because she was expensive. And she is just, when you see her now, you're like, Lori, our children's director, every time she sees her, she's like, she's getting so big. Well, in May of 2024, 11 weeks early via emergency C-section, this is what she looked like. Little 3-pound, 14-ounce nothing. 11 weeks early. That's scary for anybody. Via emergency C-section. She had to come out, otherwise within 24 hours, my wife would have died. And you think, wow, that's the tame part of her story. I remember I was at my son's kindergarten graduation, and the phone rings because my wife was in the hospital. She said, no, you need to go back to Fort Walton Beach. She was in Pensacola. It's about an hour drive. For those that have lived in the panhandle of Florida, you know you can make it in about 40 minutes. But legally, it's about an hour drive. And so I'm sitting at my son's school. He's doing his little kindergarten graduation, and my phone rings. She says, the baby's coming now. Like, you need to leave and you need to get here. So I jump in my car, and again, if you've lived there, the speed limit on Highway 98 that takes you from Pensacola all the way to Jacksonville is 45 miles an hour. If you lived there, and you've lived there long enough, you know that if you don't do 75 miles an hour, the cops shoot at you. I had to get to Pensacola quick, fast, and in a hurry. Everybody and their mother on Highway 98 wanted to do the actual speed limit. So I'm like, God, please let me get there. I haven't missed a birth of any of my kids. Let me get there just this one time. I get in. The doctor's like, she's being prepped. Scrub up. Put on this gown. Baby's coming soon. Baby came. I cried like a little girl, like I did with all my kids. Cried like a little girl. And I remember when they wheeled her to the NICU, they were bringing my wife back, or they were bringing me back to my wife. So I wheeled her to the NICU, the neo. Y'all know what it stands for. If not, ask Dr. Johnson later. So she's in the NICU, and I remember just breaking down and in the nurse's arms. I'd never seen her before. She'd never met me. Just remember, because it was a very rough pregnancy. And then she was about to move from level 3 NICU, which is like, hey, we're watching you like a hawk, to, hey, you're doing good. And they were about to move her to the level 2. And Hannah called me, and she says, Eliana has neck. And I said, all of our kids have a neck, right? If you have a serious situation, I'm not the one to come to, all right? I make jokes in very, very bad situations. This was not the joke. Do not, again, marriage advice, because I've learned the hard way. Something serious going on with your kids that are in the hospital, don't make jokes. My wife says, she has neck. I said, what's neck? N-E-C, neck. And I said, what's neck? And she says, necrotizing endo something or another. I was like, okay, what does that mean? And I did what you should never do with medical situations. I Googled it. And I realized how deep in the woods we were. The National Institute of Health says babies at my daughter's age, when she got neck, about 85% of them require surgery. At 8 days old, I didn't know they could do surgery on 8-day-old babies. At 8 days old, about 85% of them from my daughter's gestational age need surgery. 50% of those surgeries are fatal. And I thought, no. Like, God, take me first before you take my kid. Take me first before you take my kid. And then it looked like, hey, maybe she doesn't need surgical intervention. And then the doctor came in, and you could tell by his face, it's like, dang it, man. She has to have surgery. Yep, surgeon's on her way. And I remember they brought us into this family room. My 8-day-old daughter needing surgery that is only a coin flip successful. And I remember my father-in-law, he's a pastor, and it was late at night, we called my father-in-law, and he prayed with us, and he said the words, I'll never forget this. He said, God, please don't take Eliana from us. And he said, I love you, and he hung up the phone. And I looked at my wife, and I was like, that was like the worst prayer I've ever heard. Like, I understand the sentiment. Word it better, dude. So I remember calling our pastor in Florida, Pastor Ryan Burgess. And they, of course, knew the situation. I said, Ryan, she's going into surgery. And I remember Ryan was like, all right, cool. What do you need? And at that time, our life group, right? Pastor Eric was talking about our life group. Our life group heard about it. We were in Pensacola, an hour away. Our life group came, picked up my other 3 kids and said, we got them. You be there for your wife. Join a life group, Colonial. That's all I'm going to say about that. Do life together. I said, nope, Christy has the kids. We're good. We just need prayer. And I remember Ryan praying for us. And if you ever have the opportunity to go to Gathering Church in Fort Walton Beach and meet Pastor Ryan Burgess, he is very methodical how he talks. It takes him a while sometimes. And I just remember him praying, and the surgeon walked in. And Hannah and I, of course, were crying. We don't want this, but we know, like, hey, this didn't take God by surprise. And I remember the surgeon looked at Hannah, and she goes, are y'all praying? And Hannah goes, yes. And I remember it was something I don't know if I'll ever forget, and I don't know why it sticks out, but I remember the surgeon reaching up and grabbing my wife's hand, her other hand. I was holding on to my wife, and the surgeon just grabbed my wife's hand. And the surgeon prayed for us. And she said, God's got this. Not I got this. She's a pediatric surgeon. Hands more skilled than anybody I've ever seen in her life. She said, God's got this. And I watched as they wheeled my 8-day-old daughter to an OR. They said, it's only going to take about 45 minutes. Bro, when I tell you time stood still, that was not 45 minutes. That was about 83 hours of waiting on a report from the surgeon. And then the surgeon came and she goes, she's good. That was actually a pretty gnarly surgery. I said, hey, whoa, calm down. What does that mean? And she said, she'll have to have another surgery in 3 months, and she'll have to have every single specialist that exists in the world. I said, okay, God's got this. Fast forward, 4.5 months, her second surgery's come and gone. 4.5 months, 1 month after her second surgery, where she said, you will need every single specialist in the world. We took Eliana to, I don't even know what it's called, but it's something where they're like, okay, we're going to evaluate your daughter and then tell you what specialist she needs. Not a single one. I said, for the life she had, the beginning of her life, we can't explain it. No, you can't, but I can. We have a creator that wants us to come to him in our darkest moments when we're staring at the furnace of life and say, God, we need you. Because it leads to the third thing, confirmation through commitment. Did I say that right? Yeah, confirmation through commitment. They said, we will not bow. Make it 7 times hotter, throw them in, watch them cook. Verse 26, Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of the blazing fire and called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come out. Come out. We just threw them in a furnace 7 times hotter. What do you mean going on? Nebuchadnezzar walks by and he says, hey, there's a... How many people did we throw in there? Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Who's that fourth guy? Where'd he come from? And why does he look like Son of God? I messed up. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come on, dude. Get out of there. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire when all these guys, the governors and the advisors, and that word that starts with an S that I can't pronounce, when they saw that the fire had no effect on their bodies of these men, not a hair on their head was singed, their robes were unaffected, and there was no smell of fire on them, Nebuchadnezzar exclaimed, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angels and rescued his servants who trusted him. They violated the king's command, risked their lives, and rather than serve or worship any god except their own God, their willingness to stand led to divine intervention. The king not only recognized that God is the God, but issues a decree that Babylon will only worship the one true God. And in fact, if you want to read a little ahead later, verse 29 is pretty gnarly of what happens if you don't worship the one true God. So we have conflict of conviction. We have confidence in the Creator. We have confirmation through commitment, which leads us to our big idea reimagined. Our big idea reimagined is devotion to Christ might just get us thrown in that furnace. It might. But he'll meet us there for our good and his glory. Here's the part of the message where our lead pastor, Pastor Eric, will usually say, now here's the $64,000 question. I always think, like, why does he use that number? But as I was writing this message, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that one. Here's the $64,000 question. But I want to take it a step further. And I want to ask you adults the same thing I ask these students every week we look at a historical story in the Bible. Who cares? Who cares about this story? It's 2025. This was some 4,500 years ago. Who cares about this story? Because there's a chance we live it. In 2025, there's a chance we live it. I don't like to talk about the news because I don't believe any of them. But you turn on any news right now, look at what's going on in Nigeria. Christians being slaughtered simply for not bowing, for believing in the one true God. Matt, that's Nigeria. That's all the way across the world. So? You don't think it could happen to us? It sure can. Who cares? Because the somber reality is we as Christians, we too must expect times we are called to conform when God calls for conviction. Look at 2025. Family dynamics, they don't matter. The Bible says this, we don't care. Life in and out of the womb, who cares? Oh, you're a Christian, you go to church? Oh, you must hate me. There's political heat, social heat, literal heat that we might face as Christians. If we do stand up, we're mocked and we're ridiculed. We're cast from our friends or work group. Now here's the thing, right? We all have heroes. I have a couple heroes in ministry. One of them is a dude named Shane Pruitt. 10 years from now, I hope I'm where Shane Pruitt is in student ministry. Shane Pruitt is the man, the myth, the legend when it comes to students. This is what Shane Pruitt said. He said, lukewarm Christianity has become so normal that biblical Christianity seems radical. So I want to challenge y'all today. Be radical. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about joining the church. Our lead pastor, Eric, was talking about GOAT, our great family, and we relaunched our membership campaign. And he said something that I love to talk about. I tell everybody, Christian or not, I tell everybody about this. He said, if given the choice to follow society or Scripture, Colonial will choose Scripture every single time. Yeah, buddy. That's what I want. That's the church I want to be a part of. So another question to ask before we wrap up is, where's Jesus? It's the Old Testament. Where's Jesus, Matt? Bro, he's right in the fire. Yeah. He's right there. 3 dudes got thrown in. The king saw 4. Where's Jesus? He's right there. Matt, where's Jesus with my fire? He's right there. He's right there. That's all you got to do is say, Jesus, I need you. We all seen the cheesy, corny footprints in the sand poem, right? It gets hard. There's only one set of footprints. Well, that was Jesus carrying you. Where's Jesus? He's right there. Couple questions before we go into our action steps. We're just going to fly through these. If you're taking notes, listen fast. What might Christians today feel pressure to bow down? When might Christians feel the pressure to bow down? To fit in, to stay quiet, compromise their faith, to avoid standing out? What small compromises feel harmless at first, but when we weaken our witness over time? That one's hard. A little small. I'm just not going to go to church today. I'm not going to worship today. We're good. Whatever. We're fine. Nope. How can we strengthen our convictions before the pressure comes so we're ready to stand firm when it does? What does, even if he does not, right? Back to the Bible. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, hey, if Jesus spares us, sick. If he doesn't, sick. Can't scare us with heaven. Even if not, we're good. So what happens when Jesus hits us with an even if not? What does that teach us about real faith? In what situations are we often tempted to measure God's goodness by what he does or doesn't do for us? Oof. That one hurts. God, I begged you, and it didn't go my way. You must not be good. Wrong. How does remembering God's past faithfulness help us face today's challenges with courage? How could our faithful obedience, even under pressure, point others toward the one true God? Pressure is there. Again, here you go. Student director cliche number 2. Your life might be the only Bible somebody reads. Ouch. That one hurts me. Your life might be the only Bible some people read. If God met you in your own furnace today, what might he be trying to refine or reveal? We've got to realize that true courage rests not in outcomes, but in the unshakable character of God. If God spares us, sick. If he doesn't, can't scare me with heaven, right? Finally, our lives lived with courage, obedience, bear witness that the Lord alone is worthy. King Nebuchadnezzar called Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego servants of the Most High God. What do they say about me? What do they say about you? Matt, you're a Cowboys fan, unfortunately. But when people talk about me, do they know I'm primarily a Christian or primarily a Cowboys fan? Servants of the Most High God. Now, you might be here right before we go into the action steps. You might be here and you'd be like, Matt, this was a good sermon. 6 months too late. You don't know me. You don't know what I've done. I've bowed. I've lost my conviction. I've bowed. Confidence in the Creator, I've lost all of it. Which means there's no confirmation through commitment. Matt, great sermon. 6 months too late. It's too late for me. Wrong. You ain't dead. God is a God of second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. A billion chances. How do you know that, Matt? The fact that I am standing preaching a sermon, if y'all knew my life, you'd be like, heck no. Keep that guy away from my teenagers. But the fact that I am here, nothing legal. That sounded really bad. I had to throw that one out there. I've just made a lot of stupid decisions. That's all I'm saying, with my wife and everything, right? If I can stand up and I can get redeemed and God can still use me, I don't care who you are in here, God can use you. So let's look at some action steps. How do we use that? First one, pray persistently. Do I need to talk about this one? If you need more tips on this, go listen to Kelly's message last week. Her whole message. Pray. Number 2, prepare purposefully. Prepare purposefully. You got to know it's coming. Last night, right? It always happens. Every year, I say the same thing. We lose an hour tonight. I'm going to take advantage and go to sleep. And then it was the greatest World Series Game 7 in the history of baseball last night. And I was just like, please, somebody win this game so I could go to sleep. But what I know about watching these players last night, they didn't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to play professional baseball and go play in the greatest Game 7 World Series game in the history of baseball. Most of them prepared very young. I want to play professional sports. Shohei Ohtani. I want to be the greatest baseball player to ever suit up, ever. And he prepared, and he prepared, and he prepared, and he prepared, and he prepared. And I think Shohei Ohtani is the greatest baseball player to ever suit up in the MLB. We must prepare as Christians when that fire comes, when that royal decree comes. God, society, we must prepare purposefully to stand with God. And the last action step, proclaim publicly. Let everyone and their mom know who you are, what you're about. Jesus, that's who I'm about. I love what Pastor Eric says every time he gets up here to preach. We're here to make a big deal about Jesus. Hey, I'm all for sports. I love them. I watch pickleball when it's the only thing on. Right? I love sports. But at the same time, sports, they don't mean anything. Proclaim publicly the gospel. So how do we respond to this message? A couple ways. One, connect with us on the app. You can connect with us in the app. Hey, I need prayer. There's a button in the app. I need prayer. Click it. We will see it. We will pray for you. We don't just say, hey, if you have a prayer request, let us know, and then we throw it in the shredder. We will, at Colonial Church, pray for you. Connect card, you can stop by any one of our connection centers and say, hey, I need to talk to somebody. I'm going to ask our response team to come down to the front. Our response team is right here. Hey, I messed up, Matt. I want to get back on the horse. Come talk to our response team. They would love to pray with you. You can meet our pastor. He'll be in the guest suite right outside my right, y'all's left. Let's pray. God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the opportunity to preach. I thank you for a full house, God. I thank you for a nice rest, losing the hour of sleep. God, I pray that if there's somebody here that is new to the church scene, that they will talk to somebody and get what it means to be a Christian made right today. And God, I pray for the Christian here that maybe they've fallen off and they're like, I've lost my commitment or my confidence. I pray that you help them come talk to somebody so we can say, hey, it's not over for you. It's not too late. God, I thank you for this day. I pray that you be with us as we go about our lives. Help us proclaim publicly who you are. And I ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.